We made an endless runner in 3 hours. Ignore our previous 2 attempts, those didn't go super well. The project has disappeared from my Unity hub. Did you say this challenge was too easy last time? Well, I decided to download a new IDE right before we started. Hopefully this won't make things any more difficult. I got right to work on the player, which was super simple. He just jumps. 1 button. Oh, not like that though.
And while he figured that out, I made a palette for the forest and then scribbled some leaf shapes and the trunks of some trees, and then repeated that process with gradually lighter and more faded colors to add some depth. I drew some hanging vines and some fog to add ambience, and then I got it all into Unity, wrote a quick parallax script, and added some lighting.
Meanwhile, I was making the world generation. To make it infinite, there's always 3 modules that move together, and when you reach the end of one, it deletes the ground behind you and generates a new one ahead off screen. It should be pretty simple.
At the same time, I was working on the tile set. I fleshed out some rock shapes and then added grass and leaves along the outside. Then I made several modules of equal width for syntax to work into the procedural generation.
And I was still working on the world generation. The terrains are picked from about a dozen different pre-made sections, to which I add some data about their start and end height, so I could get the seams to match up. At this point, I had to add flying cheats because it was so janky, and I could not play the game well enough anyway.
While he dealt with that, I made another palette for the player character and decided it would be cool to have a wizard running through the forest. I added shading, detailed some features, and then realized that I made him way too big for the scale of our game. So I made him a little small boy, and then animated running, a 1-frame animation for jumping, and at this point this was already taking way too much time, so for a death animation, I just made him explode. And then I got all of that working in Unity.
And I was still working on world generation. I got it eventually, but geez, that was rough. Then I cranked out a system to control the light level, and after a bunch of back and forth working out issues with Vibe,
we had a working game. Well, until surprisingly, Unity broke, which took us a second to get figured out. Afterwards, I wrote a script and made some art for the light pickups, then tweaked some final numbers. And now it's time for my favorite part, sound effects and music.
And then the ambiance and the atmosphere finally all came together. The world generation did end up being a bit of a pain in my butt, but despite that,